Exposed, the incredible transformation of a disabled boy's life after his father's heartwarming, in a small Midwestern town where sidewalks seemed to brim with laughter and the sun always shone down on hopeful faces. 12-year-old Jacob stood out in the most extraordinary way. Despite his challenges, his spirit burned brighter than the summer sun, a beacon of hope amid a sea of ordinary lives. Jacob had a physical disability, a fact that cast a shadow over his days as he navigated the tricky waters of school and friendship. The other kids often overlooked him, focusing instead on their games, leaving him feeling invisible. Yet, that didn't stop him from dreaming of being part of something big like the local adaptive sports team that promised camaraderie and acceptance. At home, Jacob shared a world filled with love and tension. His dad, Mike, a hardworking mechanic and proud veteran, poured everything into his job and his son. He had a rough exterior, but it was molded by the warmth of his dedication. Yet, the reality of living paycheck to paycheck cast a persistent shadow, creeping into their conversations and dwelling in the silence between them like an uninvited guest. Every day Jacob faced the hurtful jabs from bullies, their laughter echoing in his ears while he ignored the ache in his chest. He felt the sting of their words, especially when they made him doubt himself. But when he watched videos of adaptive sports, his heart raced with possibilities. He wanted to feel the thrill of belonging, of being celebrated instead of scorned. Unbeknownst to him, Mike was secretly working multiple jobs, fueled by the hope of seeing Jacob find his place. But life threw a curveball when Mike faced a sudden health crisis. In the blink of an eye, everything changed. The familiar sound of his father's tools clinking in their garage was replaced by silence, night after night. The hospital bills piled high, and as the pressure mounted, the warmth of their home grew cold. Jacob felt the void of his father's absence, an ache that grew heavier each day. The townsfolk, once so encouraging, began to feel distant as families in the community turned into whispers behind closed doors. In a moment that could make or break him, Jacob found the courage to step onto the field at a special adaptive sports game. His heart raced in his chest, echoing the chorus of cheers from the crowd. As he confronted the bullies with resilience and skill, he became a symbol of hope for others, his triumph igniting applause that filled the stands. Yet, amidst the exhilaration, Jacob's eyes scanned the crowd, searching for his father's familiar face. Instead, a wave of dread washed over him as he realized he couldn't find him. Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Jacob stood tall, yet deep down, the uncertainty gnawed at him. Had he finally found acceptance, or was it just another fleeting moment? They needed to heal, yet a chasm opened between them, echoing their unspoken fears. Their world was fraying at the edges, and Jacob struggled to hold on, feeling the pressure of not just his dreams, but the bond with the one person who believed in him the most. Would this game bring them back together, or would it slip through his fingers like sand? The air thickened with questions, leaving Jacob to wonder, with a heart full of hope and fear, what would come next in their unpredictable journey. Jacob's heart thudded in his chest, and he tried to suppress the creeping anxiety that threatened to overshadow the victory of the day. The cheers of the crowd still echoed in his ears, thrilling and energizing, but they felt hollow without his father's presence. As his teammates celebrated, lifting him high into the air, he couldn't shake the emptiness that filled the space where Mike should have been. His joyful shouts soon blended with a simmering dread. A flurry of emotions erupted within him, swirling like a storm: elation, confusion, and the gnawing absence of his father. Jacob's eyes darted around the bleachers once more. No familiar figure with that reassuring grin. No proud nod or wave, just friendly faces he barely knew. Just when he thought this day could be perfect, reality crashed down like a weight. The game ended, and as Jacob made his way to the sidelines, he spotted his mom, Karen, waiting for him with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. She rushed forward, enveloping him in a tight embrace. "You were amazing," she exclaimed, her voice thick with pride, but Jacob sensed an underlying worry. "Where's Dad?" His own voice wavered, breaking the joyous sheen that surrounded him. Karen pulled back slightly, the smile fading as she glanced away, searching for the right words. "Your dad is. He's not feeling well, sweetheart," she finally said, her voice low. "He had to catch a ride to the hospital after work." Jacob's heart sank at her words, filling in the gaps with the unresolved silence they had navigated for weeks now. Why didn't he come? He promised. The hope that had ignited within him flickered and dimmed, overshadowed by the worry that clouded his mind. "I know, honey. He wanted to, but we'll talk later, okay? Let us get you home first." Her hand tightened on his shoulder, and Jacob could feel the tremors of her fear radiating through her grip. The warmth of the day faded as they walked back to the car, each step heavier than the last. Once home, the atmosphere felt different. Karen moved around the kitchen, her usual lively banter replaced by an uneasy silence. The smell of dinner, Jacob's favorite spaghetti, clung to the air like a comforting blanket, but it did nothing to ease the tension that enveloped the house. "Mom?" Jacob ventured, his voice barely audible. "What if Dad doesn't get better?" The question hung in the air, brittle and sharp, and Jacob felt tears prick at his eyes. He was met with a long, painful pause before Karen responded, her voice trembling. "We have to be strong, Jacob. Your dad is a fighter. But we need to support each other now more than ever." Those words sank in, an urgent reminder of how uncertain their lives had become. Just days ago, Jacob had felt the exhilarating rush of belonging. Now he faced the discomfort of fear and worry spectating on their hearts. With a heavy sigh, Jacob looked out the window, reminiscing about the cheers, the excitement, and his father's face in the stands. What would it take for him to really belong within his family and among his friends? And how could he keep his dreams alive when everything felt as if it was about to fall apart? The question lingered as Jacob watched the sky darken beyond the window, anticipation hanging thick in the air. What if he had the power to make everything right again? Little did he know, the journey ahead would test every ounce of his strength, courage, and hope in ways he'd never imagined. With a heart full of uncertainty, Jacob whispered into the night, "What now?" And as the stars began to shimmer above, a glimmer of possibility sparked in his mind. Was it time to show everyone that he could be more than just a boy with a disability? The next morning, the sun peeked through Jacob's curtains, casting warm rays onto his bed. It felt like a new day with fresh possibilities, although the heaviness in his heart lingered. He turned over, trying to push away the shadows of worry that clung to him. But the realities of yesterday crashed down again like a wave against a shore. "Jacob, breakfast." Karen's voice drifted upstairs, reminder of the normalcy they once enjoyed. He rolled out of bed, rubbing the sleep from his eyes, forcing himself to think of the game, the exhilaration of the crowd. But the thrill felt muted now, muted by uncertainty. As he trudged to the kitchen, the familiar aroma of pancakes swirled through the air. Jacob plopped down at the table, forcing a smile as Karen set a plate in front of him. She obviously tried to keep the atmosphere light, but he could see the worry etched on her face. "How are you feeling, champ?" she asked, her eyes glancing briefly away to hide her concern. "I'm okay," Jacob replied, though it felt like he was caught in a lie. He picked at his food, the pancakes dry in his mouth. "What did the doctor say?" Karen paused, her fork hovering over her plate. "They're running tests. They want to be sure he's okay." Jacob finished for her, his voice hardening. "But what if he's not, Mom?" Her gaze softened, and for a moment, he could see how much she was battling her own fears. "I don't know, sweetheart. We just have to believe he will be. Your dad's strong." Those words struck a chord. A flicker of hope ignited in Jacob's chest. Maybe being strong didn't just mean believing in his dad. Maybe it meant stepping up, taking action. He thought about that spark of possibility he had felt last night. After breakfast, Jacob made a decision. He was going to the hospital. He had to see his father, to be there for him. With no time to waste, he pushed himself off the chair, determination fueling his steps. "I'm going to visit Dad." "Jacob," Karen began, concern deepening in her voice. "I know he needs me," he insisted, his heart racing with excitement and apprehension. "You're okay with this, right?" Karen's face was fragile, caught between motherly instinct and pride. "I trust you, but let me drive you." As they approached the hospital, the looming building felt like a fortress. Jacob's heart raced with uncertainty, but as soon as they stepped inside, a calmness washed over him. The walls were decorated with bright colors, a stark contrast to the anxiety swirling inside him. When they reached his father's room, Karen hesitated, her hand resting on the doorknob. "Just remember to be strong for him, okay?" Jacob nodded, steeling himself for what lay beyond the door. As his mom gently opened it, he stepped inside, and the sight before him brought a lump to his throat. Mike lay in the hospital bed, a shadow of his usual jovial self. For drips hung from his arms, and the soft beeping of machines filled the silence. "Hey, Dad," Jacob choked out, trying to project the strength he'd promised his mother. Mike's eyes fluttered open, and the faintest smile tugged at his lips. "Jacob, you came." "Yes, I'm here," he said, forcing brightness into his tone even as doubt simmered beneath. "I won the game." His father chuckled, a soft, weak sound that whispered through the dim room. "That's my boy. I'm proud of you." But beneath the soft words, Jacob could feel his father's frailty and knew this was only the beginning of a fight. In that moment, amidst the machinery and sterile air, Jacob realized something monumental. Maybe battles weren't meant to be faced alone. Maybe it was okay to share the burden. Suddenly, he felt a swell of responsibility, not just to stand up for himself, but to do the same for the man who had always stood up for him. "Dad, I'm going to make you proud," Jacob said firmly, his eyes shimmering with fierce resolve. "I'll show everyone that being strong is about supporting those we love. Together, we'll get through this." And in the quiet moments that followed, a flicker of hope shone between them, fragile yet unmistakable. As Jacob breathed in the scent of antiseptic and something new, a sense of purpose, he couldn't shake off the feeling that he was on the verge of discovering something bigger than himself. What it truly meant to belong, to fight, and to transform. Little did he know that this was just the first step in a journey that would push him to his limits, unraveling all his misconceptions about strength and love. And as he held his father's hand, he couldn't help but wonder, how far could their bond take them? The steady rhythm of hospital machinery paired with the warm light spilling into the room created an odd sense of comfort. Jacob sat beside his father, feeling the steady grip of Mike's hand in his own. There was something about this moment, just being there, that felt right. Jacob took a deep breath, and for a second, he could almost convince himself that everything would be okay. "Did you get to see any of the game?" Mike asked, his voice hoarse, but there was a flicker of genuine interest shining through his weary eyes. "Not really," Jacob admitted. "I was too focused on thinking about coming here. But I can fill you in on all the highlights. Trust me, there were some great plays." Laughter bubbled up between them, a shared moment of levity amidst the heaviness of the situation. For a moment, Jacob forgot the fear that loomed beyond the walls of this room. His father's eyes lit up, and Jacob felt warmth pooling in his chest. Maybe sharing joy was part of the healing process too. As they talked, an endless stream of thoughts raced through Jacob's mind. He knew he would need more than strength, he would need hope. That was a shift for him. He always thought it was about standing tall against the world, but now he started to see that sometimes it was about leaning in, about embracing vulnerability. Hours passed, and, before Jacob knew it, the sun dipped lower in the sky, casting long shadows across the room. The door creaked open, and a nurse entered, flipping through charts. Jacob felt a ripple of anxiety. Her expression was unreadable. But as she approached the bed, she smiled warmly at them. "Good news. Your dad is responding well. We'll be running more tests, but I'm optimistic," she said, jotting down notes. Jacob's heart surged at the word optimistic. There was strength in that hope, something to grab onto. "So, he is going to be okay?" The nurse nodded, her bright eyes meeting Jacob's. With rest and determination, he stands a good chance. Just keep supporting him like you are. That's half the battle. Excitement flickered in Jacob's chest. He squeezed his father's hand tighter. See, Dad? You're going to get through this. We'll fight together. Mike's face softened, and there was a shimmer of pride hidden beneath the fatigue. You sure have grown, Jacob. I'm lucky to have you by my side. With those simple words, Jacob felt something shift within him. There was a connection, an unbreakable bond that transcended the sterile walls and beep of machines. Despite everything, he wasn't just a son anymore. He was a fighter. But as he looked around the room, he realized the strength would also require more than just determination. It would bring along challenges he couldn't foresee. What would happen when the initial rush of hope dwindled? How would he handle the darker moments when fear crept back in? Just then, Jacob's phone buzzed in his pocket, breaking his thoughts. He pulled it out to see a message from a friend asking about the game. With a sigh, he hesitated, the overwhelming urge to share the news of his father's progress swirling within him. For a split second, he thought about giving in. But when he glanced at Mike, who was looking at him with a mixture of hope and uncertainty, he felt the weight of the choice he faced. Did he forward the message, or did he keep this moment private and sacred? Would he allow the outside noise in? Dad, Jacob said after a moment, determination sparking in his eyes. I have to tell everyone, it feels so right. You've always taught me to share the good stuff. Mike quietly nodded, a single tear escaping the corner of his eye. Just be sure to remember how special it all is. You don't have to share everything right away. As Jacob began typing a thoughtful reply, a sense of calm enveloped him. Here, in this space, with his father, was where he found solidity. The journey ahead would be tough, but it would also be an opportunity for connections, both old and new. He pressed send and glanced at Mike, who gave a subtle smile, a silent acknowledgement that things were starting to shift. They were embarking on this journey together, one step at a time, but little did Jacob know, this was only the beginning. The challenges that lay ahead would test everything he believed about fear, strength, and love. As the beeping of machines continued softly in the background and the light of evening filled the room, Jacob wondered, just how strong could their bond become? The next morning came with a soft light filtering through the curtains. Jacob was curled up in the chair, his eyes heavy with sleep. The rhythmic beeping of the machines had become a strange lullaby, wrapping around him as he fought to stay awake. He blinked a few times, adjusting to the new day, when he noticed Mike stirring beside him. Morning, bright eyes, Jacob said, a smile creeping onto his face. Did you stay here all night? Mike's voice was a bit stronger, and a hint of humor danced in his weary gaze. Jacob shrugged, not wanting to admit how concerned he'd been. What can I say? I'm a dedicated son, he replied with feigned bravado, and it drew a laugh from Mike. Dedicated and a little bit worried, I can tell, Mike said gently. But I appreciate it. Really. As they shared breakfast together, hospital oatmeal and some weak coffee, Jacob felt the warmth of hope once again fill the small room. It was within these mundane moments that he saw sparks of possibility. Talking to Mike, sharing a laugh, even the trivialities of life began to feel significant. Have you thought about what you'd do today? Jacob asked, leaning back in his chair. I can go grab us some coffee from the cafe downstairs. You always know the way to a man's heart, Mike chuckled, raising an eyebrow playfully. But then the light around him dimmed as he added, but honestly, I want to get these tests over with. I need to know what we're dealing with. The weight of those words hung in the air. The prospect of tests. Results that could shift everything. Jacob nodded slowly, swallowing his own uncertainty. Yeah, I get it. We'll tackle whatever comes together, he said, hoping his voice did not betray the fear creeping in. After the nurse came in to check on Mike, preparations for the day's tests began. Jacob stayed close, feeling the energy shift around them. With each beep and shuffle of papers, his mind raced with possibilities. Would this be the day things turn for the better? Or would it reveal something darker, more daunting? He stepped outside the room for a moment to collect himself, the bustling hallway filled with patients, families, nurses, laughter, and sorrow. It was a battlefield of emotions. Just a few days ago, he was a young man consumed by his own trivial concerns about life, school, friendships, future plans. But now, it felt like the world was on a different scale. Everything had changed, yet some things remained the same. He could still text his friends, complain about exams, and he knew he still wanted to share his father's journey with them. Jacob. A familiar voice broke through the noise. It was Sarah, his childhood friend, standing a few paces away. Her worried expression melted into a relieved smile upon seeing him. "Hey, Sarah," Jacob mumbled, his heart lightening. She rushed over and enveloped him in a hug. "I heard about your dad." "I'm so sorry." "Thanks," Jacob replied, stepping back, his emotional armor instinctively erecting itself. "He's doing better. We're hopeful." He couldn't help but let the optimism escape like steam from a pressure cooker. Everyone around them had their battles, he realized. In this sea of strangers, there were ties that bound them in shared experiences, even if they were heavily burdened. Sarah placed her hand on his shoulder, grounding him. "If you ever need anything, you know I'm here," she said, her voice soft but firm. "Thanks, that means a lot," Jacob said, surprised by how much he meant it. Suddenly, he felt a little less alone. The door opened behind them, and the nurse returned. "Jacob, it's time for Mike's tests. Can you go in?" Jacob nodded, his heart racing. "Yeah, I'm coming." As he stepped back into the room, he glanced at his father. The look in Mike's eyes, tired yet unyielding, reminded him of their shared strength. "Ready for this, Dad?" Jacob asked, trying to keep the mood light, just as they'd done with breakfast. "Ready as I'll ever be," Mike replied, a flicker of confidence in his tone. But as the nurse began to prepare the equipment and the hospital room shifted into a flurry of activity, Jacob felt the weight of reality settle back in. He still had no idea what the tests would reveal. Breathing deeply against rising fears, he squeezed his father's hand, silently promising to be there, no matter what. What Jacob couldn't shake was the creeping doubt that shadowed their urgency. What if the tests revealed something he wasn't ready to face? The question haunted him. Would courage be enough to confront whatever came next? The sound of machines blended into a dull hum as Jacob settled into the chair next to the hospital bed. The nurse had just finished arranging the equipment, and with a gentle but firm touch, she ushered everyone else out, leaving Jacob and Mike together. "Just a few people coming in and out, Dad," Jacob said, trying to keep his voice steady. "We'll get through this." He noticed how much he wanted those words to be true, wishing they held more weight than mere reassurances. "I trust you, kid." Mike's voice wavered a bit as he searched his son's face for strength, and Jacob felt a rush of responsibility. Was he really the pillar here? Was he strong enough? They shared a moment of silence. Jacob's mind raced as he replayed every word exchanged earlier. "It's going to be okay," he had told Sarah, yet his heart echoed uncertainty. What if it wasn't okay? The nurse took a seat at the desk, her eyes flickering between them and the machines. "Okay, Mike, we're all set. Just breathe deeply and try to relax. Jacob, if you want to hold his hand for support, that's great." Jacob swallowed hard, stepped closer, and took Mike's hand. It felt warm, solid, just as he remembered during summers at the ballpark, his father teaching him how to catch. If only he could catch this moment in time, to freeze it before the tests divided their every reality. As machines beeped and monitors whirred, the nurse moved with practiced precision, explaining each step to both of them. "This will help us understand what's happening inside and guide the next steps." She smiled reassuringly, but it did little to quiet the storm in Jacob's chest. "Dad," he said, gathering courage. If the news isn't what we want to hear, I just want to say, it's all right to be scared. We can lean on each other. I'm here no matter what." His voice trembled at the end, the reality of those words crashing into him. It was one thing to say it was another to live it. Mike squeezed his hand tighter. "You're my son, Jacob. You've always been strong for me. I'm lucky to have you." There was a flicker of light in his father's eyes, a small comfort amidst the gloom. That flicker burned for Jacob, igniting a deep well of love that surged forward, pushing back against the fear. "Let us do this," Jacob said, steel in his voice. And he meant it. As difficult and terrifying as it was, he was ready to face whatever came their way. The tests commenced, and Jacob focused intently on Mike, observing the familiar lines on his face softened by the hospital light. Each beep, each whir felt like a countdown, and with every passing second, he hoped for answers that would not crush their fragile dynamic. Moments slid into one another until finally, the tests concluded. They were left again in heavy silence, the weight of the unknown hanging between them. Jacob's heart thundered in his chest, and as the nurse documented the readings, he dared to imagine all the what-ifs that lay ahead. There wasn't much to do but wait. "Hey, remember that time you took me to the amusement park?" Jacob began, desperate to bridge the silence with something light. "You screamed like a little kid on the roller coaster. I thought you were going to fall out." Mike chuckled softly, the laugh sounding like the comfort in their shared memories. "Is that how you remember it? I was just trying to make sure you weren't scared on your first ride." "Right." Jacob grinned, but the smile didn't reach the depths of his unease. What if this was a roller coaster that would take them somewhere dark? Before he could lose himself too deeply in thought, there was a soft knock at the door, and a doctor entered, her face unreadable. Anxiety twisted in Jacob's stomach. The words that followed could define their lives. "Mike," she said, her tone even, "I need to talk to you about your tests." Jacob's breath caught. In that moment, the weight of the world returned, and he realized he wasn't ready for any news. Not yet. What would the doctor say? Would it change everything? The doctor's gaze settled on Mike with a kind yet firm intensity. The air felt charged, and for Jacob, time slowed to a crawl. He felt a lump forming in his throat, every heartbeat resonating like a drum tolling deeper into uncertainty. "Your test results are in," the doctor began, her voice steady but laced with compassion. "I understand this is a lot to process, but I'll be clear. The situation is serious. We found some abnormalities that we need to discuss." Jacob squeezed Mike's hand harder, hoping to anchor his father against the tide of what was unfolding. Mike's brow furrowed, and his eyes darted around the room, taking in the monitors and equipment as if searching for answers in the sterile environment. "What exactly does that mean?" Mike's voice quivered, pressing against the doctor's clarity. The doctor took a moment, gathering her thoughts as she glanced down at the chart. "It indicates that we need to run further tests to determine the extent of the issue. There's a possibility it could be serious, possibly requiring more intensive treatment." Each word felt like a weight dropped in Jacob's stomach, the reality becoming harder to ignore. "Intensive treatment like what?" Jacob's voice cracked, his heart racing as he tasted the rising fear in the air. "What are we talking about here?" "Potentially chemotherapy or surgery," the doctor replied, the words hanging suspended like an unwelcome fog. "But we won't know for certain until we conduct further diagnostics." She paused, allowing both men a moment to absorb the implications. Jacob felt the room constrict around them, every breath becoming a laborious task. Mike's grip on his hand loosened slightly, and Jacob could sense the shift. The flicker of hope dimmed, just a little, a tender flame flickering against the wind. Suddenly, a tear slipped down Mike's cheek, the vulnerability so unlike the strong figure Jacob had always relied on. In that moment, Jacob hated feeling helpless. "Dad," he whispered, feeling the weight of those letters crash into everything. "Hey," Mike managed, his voice steadier now, pulling himself up with defiance against the tide of despair. "Let us not jump to conclusions here. We'll take it one step at a time, okay?" Jacob nodded, but it was a shallow promise. The what-ifs piled up like clouds growing darker in a gathering storm. "Your dad is strong," the doctor reassured, casting a soft glance between them. "We will take every measure to ensure he gets the best care possible." But what if Jacob hesitated, overwhelmed by the magnitude of reality? What if it's something worse than we imagined? The doctor leaned in closer. "Let us focus on what we can control, getting better information and creating a plan. Hope is powerful in situations like this. Remember that." In the silence that followed, Mike took a shaky breath. "Jacob, I need you to promise me something. No matter what the future holds, We face it together. I can't do this alone. As Jacob met his father's gaze, determination surged through him, igniting a fierce flicker of hope against the wall of uncertainty. I promise, he said firmly, sealing it with a look that wove their hearts together in that shared moment. I won't let you down. Before they could settle into the weight of his words, the door swung open again. This time, a nurse popped her head in, her bright smile contrasting against the somber atmosphere. Hey, just wanted to check on you guys. Is there anything you need? Jacob suddenly felt an avalanche of emotion and just shook his head, a silent plea for solitude. Once the door closed, the air thickened again, heavy with everything they had yet to face. Despite the uncertainty, hope nestled in the corners of Jacob's heart. A plan was forming, he could feel it. Dad, he said slowly, what if we made a list of questions for the doctor? We need to get as much information as we can. We can tackle this together. Mike nodded, a shred of brightness cutting through the gloom. Yeah, that sounds good. Let us figure out what we need to know. As they began piecing together their list, the warmth of their shared resolve wrapped around them, even as they teetered on the edge of fear. With every question, they carved out a path through the uncertainty, but just then, a loud crash echoed from the hallway, jolting both of them from their moment of focus. A familiar voice followed, full of excitement and urgency. Dad, Jacob, you won't believe what just happened. It was Sarah, bursting through the door with the careless energy of someone who didn't yet understand the heaviness looming within the room. Jacob's heart sank, knowing how much he wanted her to be part of their journey, yet fearing what this moment would bring. Are you ready for another wild ride? She beamed as if they were standing outside the amusement park again, joyfully naive of the roller coaster ahead. Jacob exchanged a glance with Mike, both of them balancing on the tightrope of emotions, unsure of how to respond. Could they find joy despite the fear? Would the three of them make it through together, regardless of what lay ahead? As Sarah stepped further inside, the room echoed with questions no one had answers to yet. They were all strapped in for a ride, and they had no choice but to move forward. Jacob felt the weight of Sarah's exuberance crash against the fragile walls they'd just begun to build. It was like standing at the edge of a precipice and watching a wave of joy surge in their direction, threatening to pull them under. Sarah, he started, searching for words to bridge the divide between her bright energy and the dark cloud lingering over them. He exchanged another look with Mike, who sat a bit rigidly now, trying to regain some semblance of that unbreakable father image he'd always held. Did you win something? Mike asked, his voice steadying, leaning into the distraction. Better. Sarah bounced on her heels. They're planning a fundraiser for the sports team. They need someone to spearhead it, and I said I'd do it. Isn't that awesome? Her excitement felt like a light in the darkness, but Jacob couldn't shake the underlying tension. The fundraiser was great, but how could they focus on that when their lives were about to be forever changed? That's great, Sarah, he managed, trying to meaningfully applaud her before the hard reality came crashing back. Guys, this is huge. Fundraisers mean a lot of attention, and we can raise money, and her voice trailed off as she looked at Mike's face, the gravity settling over her like a dark mist. Dad? Are you okay? She asked, concern creeping into her voice. Mike forced a smile, brushing her worry aside. I'm okay, sweetheart. Just got some news that we need to digest. Sarah's expression shifted, her excitement giving way to confusion. What news? Jacob hesitated, the weight of his father's health bearing down on him once more. They hadn't planned to share this yet, and he wasn't sure how much Sarah could handle. It's nothing to worry about. Just some tests. Tests? What's wrong? Her voice was rising, and Jacob hated the thought of spilling out this overwhelming storm too soon. Nothing that we can't handle, Mike stepped in, squeezing Jacob's hand lightly. Just things that need checking. You know how it is. A silence filled the room, thick with unasked questions. Jacob could see Sarah searching for answers in their eyes, each blink drawing her deeper into a spiral of worry. Is it serious? She finally asked, the innocence in her voice striking like a chord of unresolved tension. Not yet, Jacob said, determined to shield her from the magnitude of uncertainty swirling around them. but we need to focus on moving forward. That's why I think helping with the fundraiser sounds like a really great idea. As the words left his mouth, Jacob felt a rush of conflicting emotions. Could planning an event unify them? Could it serve as a distraction, or, perhaps worse yet, make them face reality even more acutely? Sarah's eyes lit up again, the idea rooting deeply. Yeah, we can make it a big event. We can invite people and get the whole town involved. Her youthful enthusiasm washed over them like a balm, even if it was tinged with sadness. Jacob watched his father and sister, the warmth of that moment pushing against the cold edges of fear. There would still be time to confront the cloud looming over Mike's health. Right now, they could focus on something hopeful, something bright. I can help you, Mike said, this time his voice filled with more strength. I was thinking about how we could host it at the community center. My buddies at work can pitch in too. And with that, a plan began to form, blossoming in the tiniest of ways between the cracks of anxiety. Jacob's heart felt somehow lighter, buoyed by the thought that they could lean into each other, despite what lay ahead. We can start with brainstorming ideas this weekend, Jacob proposed. Let us make it fun and memorable. Fun and memorable, Sarah echoed, clapping her hands with excitement. Let us get the whole neighborhood involved. We can have booths, games, and even a bake sale. The sound of her laughter burst forth like a flare in the shadows. It felt real, and yet somehow, Jacob couldn't shake a creeping feeling that this cheerful endeavor might not be enough. As they bantered about ideas, imagining what the fundraiser could become, Jacob's mind drifted back to the waiting doctor's room and those ominous words about more diagnostics. But amidst that worry, one thought quietly echoed louder, a glimmer of resolve nudging him forward. Maybe this is how they could bring light to their darkest shadows. But just as plans began to solidify, the phone buzzed on the table, drawing their focus with an urgency that felt foreboding. Who is that? Sarah asked, peering over to see Jacob's racing eyes. As Jacob lifted the device, dread settled uneasily in his chest. It was a message from the hospital, one that promised clarity, but also sparked fear with every unread message bubble. What awaited them on the other end? Suddenly, the air felt charged once more, and he realized that tonight's plans could turn on their heads in an instant, just as quickly as it had all begun. With a breath that caught in his throat, Jacob opened the message, the words ready to pull them into the next wave of uncertainty. Would it be the direction they needed, or another storm to weather together? Jacob stared at the phone, frozen in time. The message from the hospital loomed like a specter, pulsating with the weight of reality that he wasn't quite ready to shoulder. Sarah's laughter faded into a muffled echo, the bright plans of a fundraiser slipping like sand through his fingers. Jacob? Mike's voice broke through the silence. The concern prickled his skin like needles. What does it say? Jacob swallowed, his throat dry. It's from Dr. Harris. He wants an appointment. Tomorrow morning. Sarah's face fell, and her excitement dissipated like fog under the sun. Is that good or bad? She asked, her voice small. I'm sure it's just a precaution, Jacob replied, but even to him, the words felt forced. He dropped the phone back onto the table, the weight of it growing heavier. The room was suffocating now. Mike shifted, the once strong lines of his face now softened by worry. Maybe they just want to talk about the next steps, he offered, though the uncertainty was etched in his features. Next steps? Sarah echoed, her eyes wide with alarm. What next steps? Jacob felt trapped between two worlds, one where he could buoy Sarah's spirits for the fundraiser, and one where the future felt bleak, twisting out of reach. Let us focus on what we can control, he said, looking between his father and sister. We can still keep planning for the event. It's important to stay positive. But we can't ignore this, Mike said, leaning a little closer, his voice low. We need to be ready for whatever happens. Sarah's face, once animated, now shimmered with anxiety. But what if it's something serious? The innocent question hung in the air, a silent accusation toward the cracks they tried to hide. Jacob took a breath, trying to steady the tremor in his chest. Then we face it together, he said quietly. That's what family is for. The silence that followed felt heavy and profound, like a breath caught just before falling. They were on the edge, and while Sarah looked to him for reassurance, Jacob felt the uncertainty eating away at the little light they had just begun to build. "But what if I can't help?" Sarah whispered, her voice breaking. "Of course you can," Mike said, his eyes brightening with determination. "You're already helping by bringing us together. This fundraiser? It's your idea, and it will be incredible because you're behind it." Jacob watched the momentary spark return to Sarah's eyes, but it flickered as quickly as it had come. "Can we really make a difference? With everything else going on?" "Absolutely," Jacob said, forcing a smile. "You have a talent for bringing people together. This could be the start of something huge." She perked up, a bit of the glow returning. "Okay, let us do this then. We can have a talent show, like I always wanted." And she began pacing excitedly again, brainstorming wildly. "We can have a dunk tank. I always wanted to see Mr. Thompson get dunked." The laughter that followed felt like the first rays of sunshine breaking through a storm. Mike chuckled, and Jacob felt the tension shift and ease a little, but deep inside him, a quiet dread still whispered. Would the fundraiser be enough to distract them if the appointment didn't go well? Would it drown out the deeper fears lurking just beneath the surface? The night rolled on as they planned, amidst the laughter and the fading shadows of unease. They might be building something beautiful, but Jacob couldn't ignore the anxious pull of tomorrow. As they wrapped up for the night, Sarah yawned, her eyelids beginning to droop. "I'm so excited. I can't wait for everyone to see what we come up with." She bounced up the stairs, her enthusiasm a bright thread in the fragile fabric of their lives. Jacob looked at his father, who was lost in thought. "You okay?" Mike nodded, though there was a flicker of uncertainty in his gaze. "I just want to make sure this works," Mike admitted, the citizen of hope placated by fear. Jacob reached out, squeezing his father's shoulder. "It will." As he turned, glancing at the now quiet room, the phone buzzed again, the screen lighting up with another message. From the hospital. His heart raced. What could it possibly hold? Could this fundraiser truly bridge the gap, or was it merely a distraction from the inevitable? He hesitated for a moment, debating the wisdom of reading it now. But uncertainty tugged at him, pulling him deeper into the unknown. What awaited them next? The morning dawned crisp and clear, sunlight spilling through the window like a promise. Jacob's heart thrummed with anticipation. Today was the day they'd meet with Dr. Harris, and the weight of uncertainty hung in the air like a thick fog. He pushed himself out of bed, a mix of hope and anxiety swirling within him. "Jacob, breakfast is ready," Karen called from the kitchen. The smell of bacon filled the house, a familiar comfort even amidst the chaos. As he trudged down the stairs, he felt the complexity of their situation weigh down his shoulders. In a few hours, they would confront their worst fears, but he refused to be overcome. "Morning, champ," Mike greeted, his face dimmed by the grayness of worry. "Morning, Dad," Jacob replied, trying to muster a semblance of cheer. He observed his father. The light in his eyes fought against the shadows of concern. They talked little during breakfast, focusing on food instead of feelings. But as they finished up, Karen broke the silence. "Remember, whatever happens, we face it together. You two are stronger than you know." "Yeah, we'll be okay," Jacob echoed, but there was an edge of uncertainty in his voice. Once they arrived at the hospital, a hush fell over them. The sterile atmosphere buzzed with the dull hum of life around them, the rhythmic beeping of monitors, the shuffle of nurses, and distant, muffled conversations. "Ready?" Jacob asked in a tight voice as they approached Dr. Harris's office. Mike squeezed his shoulder. "Together, right?" "Together," Jacob agreed, clutching his dad's hand. They entered the office, and the doctor greeted them with a warm smile, the tension in the room loosening slightly. However, her eyes betrayed the seriousness of the situation. "Thank you for coming in," Dr. Harris began, her tone steady yet gentle. "After analyzing your results, I know that this can be overwhelming, but I want to assure you that we're absolutely on your side." Jacob held his breath, his heart racing in his chest. "Okay," Mike said, his expression betraying nothing. The doctor paused, gathering her thoughts. "We found some abnormalities, but I'm hopeful that with the right treatment plan, we can address this." We'll start with some aggressive options to manage it effectively. Jacob felt a flood of relief wash over him, hope pushing through the cloud of dread that had settled into their lives. What does that mean, aggressive? Mike asked, his voice steadier than Jacob expected. The doctor explained the treatment options: chemotherapy, possible surgery, a supportive care plan. Each word felt like a step toward regaining control, a way forward. As they discussed logistics, Jacob's heart began to soar, matching the pulse of their conversation. So, there's a chance Dad can get better? He asked, daring to dream for the first time through this storm. Yes, Dr. Harris assured, her eyes focused on the two of them. We'll discuss everything in detail and ensure you're supported every step of the way. Hope is powerful. It gains ground every day. Jacob felt a smile spill over his face, echoing the one emerging on Mike's. We can do this, he said, finally believing it. Back in the car, the weight of fear had lifted slightly, replaced by a cautious optimism that curled at the edges. We start this fight today, Jacob declared, his voice stronger. Mike nodded, absolutely. But let us also not forget about the fundraiser. We have a date to get ready for. The mention of the event rekindled the spark of excitement they built together. We can still make it an enormous success, Jacob exclaimed, picturing Sarah's energy fueling their plans. The day rolled on, filled with preparations and phone calls, laughter creeping back into their exchanges. Sarah arrived, practically bouncing, her enthusiasm contagious. Okay, what is the plan? She asked, ready to dive into action. First, we make our committee, Jacob started, his heart swelling. Then we can involve the whole town. As they worked together, Jacob realized their lives had transformed before his eyes. The fear remained, but now it was layered with love, togetherness, and a shared purpose. Days turned into weeks, and the fundraiser crept closer. The whole town chipped in, encouraging every kid to show up and rally around Mike, boosting his spirits. As they decorated the community center, laughter echoed, the kind that warmed the heart and pushed shadows away. Then finally came the day of the fundraiser. The sun shone down brightly, casting a golden hue across the festively chaotic scene. Families, friends, and cheers danced everywhere as Jacob caught sight of Mike standing tall, smiling wider than he had in weeks. Look at this. You've done something incredible. He beamed to Jacob and Sarah, pride etched across his face. The festivities rolled on in waves, and for the first time, Jacob truly felt what it was to belong. Every cheerful face, every shout, every clap filled his heart to the brim. And amidst it all, he could see the healing happening, not just for his father, but for himself in loving his family, supporting each other, fighting against fate and fear. That day, Jacob saw his father laugh like he hadn't in years, his spirit renewed, hope rekindled as the sun dipped low, painting the sky in hues of potential. They had learned through every trial that the heart deals beautifully with challenges, transforming hardship into strength, nurturing bonds that would live long beyond their struggles. As the fundraiser closed with applause echoing through the air, Jacob turned to his father. Together, he said with a radiant smile, heart spilling over with gratitude and love. Together, Mike agreed, his own eyes shining with joyful tears. And right there, beneath the softness of twilight, Jacob felt the promise that no matter what came next, they would face it hand in hand, his heart finally, beautifully whole. Now, it's your turn to act. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and show your support. Comment your reactions and feelings about this emotional ending. And please, share this video instantly with at least 5 friends who need to witness this incredible transformation. You need to subscribe now because this is the moment to show you care. Don't wait not even one more second to share this inspiring journey.